So I guess we can start. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll lead the call. So we'll start off with the previous to-dos. I'm just opening my page. Okay. Our first to-do was Emmanuel and Alfayo to attach all payloads to the ticket. Basically, we have created the ticket. We have attached the payload that was generated, but in the course of this call, we are going to review. We'll have an agenda item to discuss the generation of that. Whatever we did, I saw Anthony comments was that it looked incomplete, but then that will also discuss more when we go to the agenda of the day. The next item was Win was to send an email on pair programming with Ojuang. Don't know whether I did that. Win, did you have any communication with Anthony?
Not through email, but I mean we had a talk through IRC a bit, but we will follow it up. I need to go through the payload first, and then I can talk more with Anthony.
Okay. And then the next item was either to invite Regan to manage Google Plus calls. I don't know whether that happened. If you're invited, not yet. Okay, maybe we would create probably a to-do to have a follow-up on that. The other one was Regan to coordinate or to team up with the system admins, specifically Mienja, to systematically go through the core modules to find and document any issues. I think I saw Regan had maybe you can just give an update.
Yeah. So I think you've all seen the email that Mienja sent a while ago. So the email was exactly that. It was just a timetable on all the specific timeline by which those tests should be done. So as it is, we're waiting for the end of the day today. By today's end, most of the modules, most of the functionalities should already be tested, not just by the developers, but by all the teams that require to. FCT, all those things.
Okay. Thank you, Regan. The other item was Anthony to continue testing MRS reports on 1.9.
I tested that today, and I just need to look at database, because there are some errors I was seeing, and some were suggesting that could be some tables don't exist, because when you see an error like missing, cannot find patient ID column, you get to worry a bit. So I need to get into the database and check if the tables are properly structured.
Okay. Thank you. The other item was Win to go through Mzima changelog and update the tickets accordingly. Yeah, I remember I saw that, and maybe Win can give a comment on that.
Yeah, I think I update all the ticket with the changes from Prasanna. I think what's pending is mostly just testing the changes. I think I reassigned the ticket to Manu, I think. So
yeah, okay. We've been carrying out the tests, but I think Manu is in more. We've been carrying out the tests, and some have been passing. So I think Man will be in a better position to explain because he has more skills,
Yeah, I
more
think.
knowledge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think updating, just update the ticket once the test is done. I know the wiki, the Jira is just up just now, so please update the ticket.
Okay, we will do that.
Yeah.
And then the last one was Regan to file a ticket on OpenMRS Mzima module bugs and share with Win.
Yeah, I think he actually created. Win, I think you created most of the tickets on Mozilla, most of the bugs that we had identified. So what we have done is we've picked up a couple of tickets and begun to update them, but that's all based on the list of Mozilla bugs that you filed on Jira.
Yep.
So
But I remember this one you remember the OpenMRS module?
yeah.
This was the one that relate to that. I don't know whether he has also created that ticket.
No, I haven't. That's my fault. Actually, we have been having issues with Jira, and I've been having a lot of meetings and stuff. But I'll set this up. This is actually something that I had promised to do to Wheeler a while ago. So I'll get that done.
Okay. So thank you. Now we have done our to-dos. If we have any other questions or some to-dos are missing, this is what I recorded during our last call. Is there something that we missed out before we go to the next item of the agenda?
Yeah, I think there was one. We had a discussion with Win a while ago, and this was specifically regarding the teleconsultation form. And one of the things we're exploring is embedding images within the Mozilla forms rather than having those loaded on a separate intent. So I had a crack at that, and I had a discussion with Sam as well. Sam is the developer of the teleconsultation form, and I found out a set of interesting things that I wasn't aware of. One of which was that images that are captured using the teleconsultation form are actually stored on the device when they're encrypted. And even when you want to edit those images, so for instance, if you have taken a picture and you want to just change it or something like that, take another picture to replace it, then the process of actually seeing what you had initially, the picture that you had initially taken, that process of actually bringing up that picture and loading it up on Mozilla uses some sort of decryption mechanism. You are correct me, Will. So that was one angle of complexity that that we hadn't considered, which is that for us to display images inline within the forms, we had to load up those images from their encrypted binaries. So that's something that I haven't had an opportunity. It's not something that I've had an experience with, and I'm not even sure that you can load an encrypted image onto a web view. Ideally, I'm not sure if you can load an encrypted image onto a web browser using JavaScript and the sort. So I'm not sure really on whether or not this is something that we should continue investigating, because it looks like a lot of work has been done towards form. It may be difficult to try and load an encrypted image onto a web view.
Wouldn't that be the job of the platform to provide that image securely to the JavaScript?
Yeah, we could try that. I mean, I could definitely give that a try. The problem is the decryption process already takes way too long. I think they're using the 64 encoding or something like that, and that process of encoding and decrypting was already taking too long. I know they did some changes. They modified the way in which they read the images, so that instead of reading as bytes, they began to read them as chunks. So I'm really skeptical about having a JavaScript interface, primarily because of the time it takes just to encrypt and to decrypt that image and actually load it up. And in addition to that, Sam was skeptical again. Sam kept saying that doctors may not necessarily want an image displayed within the form. his perception was that because of privacy, they might prefer to have a button where somebody selects to explicitly view the image and things like that. So, so those two are the key concerns that we're battling with back.
I think for the teleconsultation, the requirement is to store the image securely. And I think for your case, where you want to display it on the form, I don't think that image is belong to the patient. So it's not the image of a patient, but it's more of an image for education purpose for the provider, I think, Regan. So the image that you need to display on your form, I don't think that one need to be encrypted. So it's more of education kind of image, while the teleconsultation, it's an image of the patient that you need to protect because it's HIPAA. Bert can correct me on this. So the image for teleconsultation is yeah. Go ahead, Bert.
Yeah, I don't know the exact workflows for doing teleconsulting that by them one an image of the patient and we want to protect it. If you're saying the images and the forms are just going to be resources, essentially that are just going to come from a library of images, and then you're right that use case you would need to encrypt them.
Okay.
I would think compression is probably more important than encryption in that case.
Okay, well, I mean, compression, chances are the forms will be loaded onto the devices when we're still on the Ampath network. So yeah, I mean, compression may be an issue, but I don't think that we'll be having the SD cards, the phones that we're using have a lot of memory, so it may not be sending those images over the network either. But I think now what that means, I guess, Win, is that there will be two kinds of images. There will be the images that are collected, and those will have to be encrypted. And then there'll be the images that come packaged with the form, like the educational stuff, those kinds of resources, and those will not be encrypted.
Yeah, you probably want to clarify with Martin, but my guess would be that the images that you'd want to use on a form, you wouldn't, obviously you want to have forms, you may want to have forms that have inline or embedded images, but I think what he's thinking of is that you'd also be able, or you'd want to be able to refer in a form to an image resource that may be coming from a library, so it's not just embedding that image into the form, but maybe having 4 different forms that all refer to the same video or image, some media resource. That so I mean that might change your approach a little bit if you think of it not so much as an inline image in the form, a URI or a reference to Musema would be able to deliver essentially from a library of images, and it could manage making sure that those resources are made. That I think you need to just sort out the use case. What's the actual need? And Martin probably can describe that better. I mean, since he's driving it. The other piece is that I definitely think anything that is captured by the phone, so any image captured by the phone needs to be encrypted, because the assumption is that is going to be a picture of a patient, and in my mind that would be a feature you would want of the Musema platform. You wouldn't want to have to do that in each form. You would want to just say, Musema, take an image and give me the reference to it, and Musema would encrypt it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that is currently the case. I think right now, as it is, that particular functionality of encrypting images that have been taken is something that's specific to just the teleconsultation form. You can correct me when. But anyway, but I'll get in touch with Martin just to get more details on that. But I mean, one of the things that we have been thinking and the model that we've been putting together is a model that caters for having different forms that all have images with the same name. So having some sort of name spacing mechanism so that you can package the forms as a bundle and have images that may even have the same name but are attached to different forms without causing any form of conflict. Anyway, so I think what I'll do is I'll talk to Martin and prepare a demo and probably send that to the rest of the guys by the week's end, and then you can all try it out. And maybe by the next developer call, we can see how that looks and have a discussion on it.
Okay, thank you, Regan.
Sounds great.
I think that sounds. The next, now I think any other item first before we, any other item that we missed on the to-dos? I think Regan has pointed out that if there is none, then we will go to the agenda. The first item we have already covered, that is reviewing our previous to-dos, and now the next item, which I don't know whether it got updated, I was trying to update, was we wanted to discuss the generation or the format of the payload or the JSON that is generated through Mzima. After we did initial encounter form, we realized when we tried to submit to generate the payload, some of the elements or content of the form were not created into, they were not included into the JSON that, or the payload that was generated. If you look at the payload that we have posted on that Jira ticket, it seems it is incomplete because what it is missing, it seems like when the ThoughtWorks guys were developing this generation process, they did not consider household. So any data that, or any item that we had captured through household section has not been generated. So basically it is like they only considered encounters, patient, observation, I think encounter, patient, and observation. The three things that probably are key to general EMRs. But also something that is also missing is like we wanted at least a section where this information could be linked, like if saying a household, it should have like members, and a member should have like a specific observations for a patient. But seems like the ordering is not very specific. So we wanted to probably discuss this out in this call and see what would be the way out forward.
Yeah, I think maybe I could put a bit more context to that. So to win than anyone else. So what we noticed is any Mzima form that we create can only submit three kinds of data: patient, encounter, and observation data. In fact, the payload that we send is actually, you can see those categories clearly listed out in the JSON payload: patient, observations, and encounters. But now we have a scenario where we have forms that have additional categories of data. So for instance, the PHCT, the household survey form, has, in addition to the patient, encounter, and observation data, it has household data. So we aren't quite sure on where that household data should go. And we're not sure that if we do add another category to the payload, whether the handler will be able to take care of that additional category. I don't know if that stuff makes sense.
Yeah. So only encounter, patient, and observation get submitted uh, from the form that you created?
Yes.
I think there's a JavaScript that does the compilation, and it's inside Muzima JS, I think. We need to have a look at this JavaScript.
Yeah, we had a look at it in the morning
Mm-hmm.
with the rest of the guys, and we found that the JavaScript, it seems to us that what it does is it just fishes out the patient data, it fishes out the encounter data and the observation data, and that's it. So any additional data that you have isn't, I mean, it's not really packaged. It's packaged into the payload as observations, which is not necessarily the case. So like in our case, the additional data was actually household data. And that household data should actually go to a separate table on OpenMRS. So it
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be the observations table. It should go to there's a household data table. So our confusion is if we do allow this extra household data to be packaged as observations, then in a way, we are more or less implying that we want that household data to go into the obs table, which is not
Mm-hmm.
true. We don't want that. We want that household data to go to a separate table, and thus we feel like like this household data should be a different part of the payload altogether, instead of having to be cramped into observations.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to have a look at the JavaScript function that being used to compile all this payload.
Okay. Anthony has a question or a comment.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
I just wanted
what
to
you. Oh, go ahead.
So, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that when we try to look at the JavaScript function, yeah, it's possible to add any other thing you want, but our worry was that after adding that, it's like it won't be possible to handle any other form without those additional sections. So we were thinking of something a bit generic that could be extended uh, to handle different forms.
Yeah. Eh, So I guess before Buck goes, I could probably put a bit more context again into that. So the way the way the JavaScript code works is that, so for patient data, like if you have a form which has patient input fields, then each of those divs will be marked with a class attribute that says patient. So for instance, the class name will be patient dot, patient ID or patient dot. So all of them will have that prefix. And the same thing for all the divs that have input fields for the encounter data, and the same thing for the fields that have input fields for observations. So we were wondering if we can use the same mechanism. So for the household data, we can have all the input fields, like all the form data that's household data related. We could have those input fields have that class attribute, or a class attribute that's prefixed with household. So one of the concerns is what Anthony is raising, but then the second concern is the OpenMRS handler, the one that's supposed to receive this data from the Muzima forms, only recognizes patients, observations, and encounters. So again, if we do go ahead and add on another category of stuff, it may be part of the payload, it may be packaged and put into the payload. So we might make those modifications to the JavaScript. But once that payload is out and it hits the OpenMRS handler might not really know what to do with the household data.
Go ahead, Bert.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that it seems like you'd want a more generic interface, but it sounds like it's already there, just needs to be extended. You might want to think of a model where Musema could provide some basic function, like generic functionality out of the box, and then and then a form could optionally extend that or replace that by just you know when the form's loaded saying, oh, here's my serializer method or my whatever marshaller, so that there'd be kind of out of the box serialization of the form data, but that could be customized when needed.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, that's what we were thinking as well. That if there was a generic way in which we could express all this other data, stuff that's not patient or encounter observations, there was a generic way that we could do that, and the handler knew that this is the extra stuff, then that would be, I guess the only other issue then we would have is, so like for instance, the household data is supposed to go into a household table. It has its own path of processing. So somebody else might have an additional data that perhaps requires some more complexities in terms of having its own processing. So you're right. I mean, I guess having a generic way of representing the extra data, the extra stuff, is important. But how that interfaces with the handler, the OpenMRS handler, is something that we're still really wondering. We're not quite sure how.
I think by design you would say anything that follows this particular predefined approach. Maybe you say here's for patient encounters, here's a handler that can deal with those. Here's a separate handler that will take forms that are maybe household based, and it knows what to do with those. And then if you made a form that say was going to submit data about inventory tracking that had nothing to do with patients or households, then you might have to create a separate handler for that. I mean, that's what I thought the general approach was. I don't know when you could comment on whether or not that's the case.
Yeah, I think that's the design for the handler. So if you have a different structure, that one will be handled by different handler. So you have a common handler which understand the basic structure, but if you have a structure that deviate with the basic one, then you need to define your own handler, because
So when you say basic structure, is that a very generic, or does a basic structure make assumptions that it's a patient or encounter?
Basic one is the encounter. So you have encounter.
But that's not hard coded. That like you're saying that if you extend an encounter and have some special stuff, you could extend that basic handler. But if you wanted to submit a form that had nothing to do with patients or encounters, you could use a completely separate handler, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then the issue here is that we have a form that has both the generic stuff and new stuff. So the thing, it could benefit from the initial handler, but the problem is the initial handler can't be able to get all the data.
So it seems like in that case you'd want to extend the basic handler to create a household handler that would know how to deal with the household data and then would leverage what's already in the basic handler to deal with the patient-specific stuff.
Yeah.
I think the handler we need to be referring to should be the JavaScript one that generates the payload, the JSON stuff, because for the back end processing, any format of payload should have a specific handler that handles that. So I think all we need to do is to ensure that whatever generates the payload generates everything that is required.
Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of need to deal with both sides.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Win, one of the questions that I have, this is something that's not clear to me, I guess, is if somebody sends, if a Mozilla form submits a payload to OpenMRS, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the handler, the handler is it can't be able to pick all the data, right? Which ideally means that I should be creating a new handler or extending the current one. Am I able to like extend the handler class, and have that as the controller for that payload, like be the handler that receives it?
Yes.
Yeah, you can, because every form data need to define some sort of discriminator, and the handler will only. So you need to define the discriminator in the form data that you submit, and then in the handler, you also define that this handler only accept this kind of form discriminator. So you, for example, you will have discriminator for, I don't know if discriminator is the right term, but for example, you have form data, encounter form data. So you will have the handler um, that only accept this encounter data, and then the form data will be processed by this handler only. So other handler will not try to uh, handle this.
Yeah, but what I'm wondering is, so like for instance, assuming there's an existing handler which
Mhm.
does 50% of the work. So what I want to do is I don't want to create an entirely new handler. What I want to do is like I guess just extend the existing functionality, right? Like the existing handlers, they shouldn't be final. Like I should be able to extend an existing handler and then just adding processing for the extra stuff because I know the other stuff was already handled by the other class, by the other handler. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, is that something that I can do? Or are handlers declared as final? Like you can't extend them and then just add on stuff.
No, any handler is not final, so you can definitely extend the
Okay.
functionality.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think in this case we'll have to do that, right? For the PHCT household survey form.
Yes.
So, okay, I think it's good that I'm not, at least from the server side processing, I think what Win has explained made sense. So I think we also have a JavaScript handler. The one for JSON. That's what I'm.
We need to extend such a model where we'll have a general one, then it gets extended to incorporate additional stuff that are not what encounter ops and patient data.
That's again, Win can correct us here. When we were having a look at this with Manu in the morning, it seems as though, the way in which the serializer works, the JSON serializer works is, it just looks for divs that have, for instance, a patient class attribute. Like the class attribute has patient with something. If it has that patient prefix, then the JSON serializer just picks all that data and puts all the patient data in the JSON part of the payload and all that. But the interesting thing was, like that was what that's what we noticed works for the patient data, for the encounters data. But for the observation data, it looks as though the JSON code, what it does is it just picks everything else that's not patient and that's not encounter. So everything else is just dumped as observations, which meant that all our ob stuff and all our household data was all packaged in the observation part of the payload, which is obviously not what we wanted. So I guess we will have maybe if we can have some time and just look through the Mozilla JavaScript and see how the serializer works, how it's able to extract data, the data that has been filled into the form and package it into a payload and kind of put it into the various categories. I think that would really help. Oh, yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. So yeah. So the patient stuff, you can see it's
Yeah, it's checking for the index for patient and then encounter and then the else is without observation. I think that's why everything is going into the observation. So
yeah.
Yeah, it should just check for observation.
yeah.
It is for the generic stuff.
Yeah, so all our generic stuff gets put into observation. Like anything it doesn't figure out.
That makes sense. And I believe, I don't know how much effort it will require to, because probably we need to make this change before Anthony continues to create the handle.
Yeah, that's obvious because we need a sample payload.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think when we will be making some modifications to Mozilla.js, firstly, so that only observation data gets to be, only data that's marked as observation gets into the observation part of the payload, and then find out a way to like add in extra stuff. Have some sort of generic way of getting in all the extra kinds of data and putting them into different kinds of, into different categories of payload. So that we can create a handler for that.
Yep. Cool.
I think it should end by saying that there will be a ticket created to that effect.
Thank you for reminding us.
Yeah,
that.
create a ticket on this one because we want to keep track of the progress.
So Regan will create it.
Okay.
Okay, I think it has been an informative discussion. From our point, that's it, but we would want to find out whether there are any other items that you want us to discuss in this call.
Shouldn't we convert any AOB into observations?
Observations. Yeah, we should.
Yeah, going by the code, it's very possible.
We also need a ticket for someone to document this, because this is written in the code, so it assumes that people who are developing the forms knows that when you want to represent patient, you start with patient, you start with observation. But like when we just realized this when we are building the payload. But when you are developing, you are trying to follow the other forms. So luckily, the other ones had actually used that structure. But I personally never knew that there was somehow some kind of hard coding into the code into the process that knows that when you start with this, it will be a patient, an encounter, or an observation. Or maybe, if possible, I don't know whether we could have a way of defining tags such that someone could define the tags that they want, and then those tags probably get generated into a JSON based on how the user defined those tags into the HTML.
Yeah, I mean, I think one way you could extend it if you went just purely on the tag-based approach would be to say that anything that isn't a recognized tag, then Museum would call back to a function in the form to say, here I got some data that I don't recognize, and the form could use some utilities to handle serialize those, turn those particular pieces into JSON. But yeah, you definitely want to be careful not to bake in too much business knowledge about it's a patient or an encounter. You want to make those easy to do, but you don't want to bake that design in at the lowest level because these forms could be used for things that have nothing to do with patient encounters. Household is just the first example of what could be, many, many hundreds or thousands of examples of things that, someone might want to do, create forms that track inventory or track, plant growth or animal well-being or something in the future. So.
Yeah. Maybe we could even think about like having a way in which you can override the serializer. So like if you have your own class attributes, like if you have household data, then you can like kind of extend the serializer and say, if there's household, then do this, do that, and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more additional observations? So we are going to call these AOBs observations.
Any other observations?
One more OBS.
Yeah, that's what the AOB stands for, right? Any obs? All right.
Okay, I think seemingly people are okay with what we have discussed. One of the things that we observed last was that probably after this we'll also go straight to our Scrum, because we noticed that sometime when after the call we forget to go to do our Scrum. So
Yeah.
any other?
So
Yes, okay.
there's a question that Willa has posted up on chat. So I'm sorry, Willa, I hadn't noticed that customization was still on. I guess I'll have a chat with Nielcha to find out how that can be disabled and the tests done with customization off.
Actually, to disable it is just to go to module administration page and just turn it off. I was just wondering whether you guys had any reason to turn it on, because the idea was to let users test without having that, so that they can, they can have the feel of running the system without using customization. And that's why. So I was surprised to see that the module is on, is back on, and I thought maybe you guys sit down and discussed and saw that there is a reason or there is a need for that to be turned on.
No, actually, I hadn't noticed. Maybe the rest of the guys had, but I hadn't. There wasn't really. I don't know. I'm not even sure that Niancha or whoever set that up had a reason to.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, maybe I think, like you said, we just need to. You can talk to Niancha and ask him. Maybe he forgot or something. When you're going through these modules, you just turn everything on, and so maybe.
Yeah, I think he must have just forgot, because what he did was to simply copy modules from research and dump them there.
Yeah, but that happened a long time ago. Did he do this again?
So
The copying of modules and starting them happened when I was there. Did this process happen again? Did something go wrong in between here?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe he was testing something out. He decided to switch it. He decided to switch it on and all. I don't know, because to the best of my knowledge, no modification has been done since you were here.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I was thinking. Okay, well then Miecha should know. So I guess we just need to ask Miecha and see if there's maybe if we just forgot, then we just turn it off and see how people are responding to that, responding to the new system without the module on. Because I think you guys remember that Sam and his team with the oncology point of care module, they have this clash with the customization module. So we need to be sure that if we can run without customization, then it will be supposedly easy for oncology module to run on 1.97. Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Any other observations?
We come to an end of our.
Okay. Seems like we have all ended our observations. I think we
We've reached the curly brace at the end of our conversation.
Thank you, Mark.
I have a quick question. Is there any plan to discuss like how we will do the upgrade to 197? Because last time, I mean, this is not related to the developer, but I was just wondering if anyone aware if there's a plan to discuss about how we will do the upgrade. Are we still using like the, what is it called, the DRBD and all those things? Is there any discussion to drop it and use different approach or talk with people with more experience on how to set up this kind of server? Because we have a lot of server, and then I mean the secondary node on DRBD is not being used, and I think it's in a way I don't know, wasting powers, and I don't know.
Yeah. Willa had been investigating that and brought up the question of do we need to do DRBD?
Yeah.
And I think it's a fair question given that we've leaned on it only maybe once in the last 5 years.
Yeah. I was just wondering if there is a plan to discuss this further, Bert, or it's just gonna die, on the road. I think it's really.
I think we have to have a backup of the system.
Yeah.
So we need to have a backup solution, whether that's DRBD or something else. It sounded like on the last conversation that the assumption was DRBD just because that's what folks were used to having. It does have the the nice feature of failing over, but I think as we talked about, you could get that with Heartbeat and then not necessarily using DRBD. So the trick is I mean, the reason we went with the DRBD was it wasn't what we wanted was something that would make a complete copy of the server onto the second node, like a Norton Ghost or something that copied the entire system and as a backup, and then switch to it instantly if needed. And short of that, I think we have to work through what the what other backup solution, how it would work, and how would like for example, if Tomcat is upgraded on the primary server, we need a process to upgrade Tomcat on the backup server. So I think Willa was looking into those possibilities, and that was started that conversation on last week's technical call. I think we do need to push that forward, though.
Yeah, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. I was thinking that DRB was being used along with the Heartbeat to have that failover thing.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so it's not a DRBD thing. It's a Heartbeat thing, right? With pacemaker nowadays, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's both. I mean, it's really we need a backup, and so Heartbeat alone doesn't give us a backup. It's Heartbeat plus something.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether this failing over is being done entirely by DRBD. So
no. DRBD just allows the data to be there when you fail over. The Heartbeat is what does the failover. And Heartbeat is what allows you to set up a single IP address that everybody points to that. Like AMRS, Ampath ORKE points to a virtual IP address that's shared between the two servers. And that's a very valuable thing to have. In terms of being able to switch over quickly, but we still need to sort out, what is it? What's the backup approach?
Yeah, now you've raised another very interesting point. I didn't consider that. You have talked about, for example, when you upgrade Tomcat on one server, then you need that to be upgraded on another, and that's an entirely different thing. Because what I was thinking is mostly when I was talking about the other solution, the other alternative here, which was MySQL application, it wouldn't do that. So I guess if we are going to consider these kind of things like upgrading the entire file system, whatever happens on this particular server should happen there, then that's going to be tricky. I guess maybe we will be stuck with DRBD. I mean, if we compare with MySQL application, and I don't think we can find another solution. So otherwise, if we just need to...
Yeah, DRBD doesn't do that. So we're still in that same situation right now, where if Tomcat's upgraded on the one node, it has to be manually done on the other one, and that's one of the challenges is that we haven't necessarily kept those perfectly in sync, and that's unrelated to DRBD. That's more of having the policies in place and if possible finding the software applications that like DRBD, but that would allow us to automate some of that. I don't know if they exist though. So anyway, I've unfortunately I got another meeting I have to hop into. I
Okay.
think Wynn's point is that we should continue this conversation.
Yes.
Maybe we should queue it up for. I might be able to. Well, yeah, I don't know if I might have some time this afternoon. If not tomorrow, we could talk about it.
Okay, fine. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
All right.
We also
Okay.
need that. Okay, great. Just go ahead.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you, but bye. All right, guys. Willa, I think we can. I don't know. Have an email conversation when we want to discuss further.
Yeah, the thing is, this is not just a developer. Like you said, it's not a developer thing. It's more of the Ampath thing. Like it involves the IT team. So Miech and his guys should be in this. And the thing is, I think you were on the technical call last week. So the issue was how much time can we allow for failover? When we know this technology, we need to have that in mind. So we don't have that parameter yet. And Miencha I'm not sure if he got it yet, but if he did, then he hasn't informed us yet. So when you get that information, we'll be in a very good position to know. Because basically, we have these options, and we just need to see what we need, our requirements, and what the options are offering. Then we have to choose between those.
Yeah, can someone follow it up with me for tomorrow's call?
And he was also, actually, I just didn't want to, sometimes it's more like you are getting into other people's business. It's not good. So I think he's so swamped with his stuff because he's supposed to share kind of an upgrade plan, and he was supposed to be sharing it. He said he was going to share it on Monday, but he hasn't shared it yet. So
well, this is important because to roll out Mozilla, we need to know what, how far are we from 197, and how are we going to roll out the Mozilla on 197? Because previously, when we built Mozilla last year, there's a plan to upgrade it, and they said we can upgrade this in a few months, and we built Mozilla on 197, and it's been a year. There's no 197, and now we need to fail back. All the modules need to be 1.8 compatible. Now I'm just wondering, should we just wait for the 197 or do 1.8 compatible fixes?
We are going to be on 197, especially, I mean, we are supposed to be on 197 at least at the end of this month. But if that doesn't happen, because we are going there in July, I think you're going there too.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll make that happen. So in July, after post-July, like from August and September, we should be on 197. I think you can plan on that.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to step on someone's toes here. I'm just wondering, like, what is the trajectory of 197? That's all. I mean.
Yeah, so that's the trajectory, I guess. I mean, you can safely assume that by the end of July we'll be on 197.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
guys.
but I will. I'll ask Nyancha to just give us an upgrade plan. I know he's produced a testing plan, but I'll ask him to share with us to share the upgrade plan with us.
Yeah, just remind him. I guess he's having a lot of things in his plate. So
Yeah, he's actually been on the field sorting out issues on remote sites. You know, now there's only 2 of them, so it's a
yeah,
little.
it's really tough. I understand that. That's why when I thought about it, I was like, okay, you know what? Just leave the guy alone for now.
Okay.
Yep. All right, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.